On today's show, we've got part 3 of our Rockets midseason review series, where we'll be focusing on Amen Thompson and his growth this season, particularly his on-ball performance, as well as why Jabari Smith Jr.'s defense has actually been a bigger issue than his shot making to this point in the season. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on YouTube, just search Locked On Rockets. On today's show, we've got part 3 of our Rockets midseason review series, where we will be focusing on Amen Thompson and his growth, in particular his on-ball growth as the season has progressed, as well as Jabari Smith Jr. and his struggles up to this point of the season. We're going to get into all of that on today's show. First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. The other part of the Rockets' big three, though, Amen Thompson, who has, as of late, there was a point where it's kind of the inverse, where like Amen Thompson was kind of, let's be honest, he was BSing a little bit earlier this season, especially with some of his finishing around the rim and whatnot. And then as the season has progressed, as the season has wore on, and especially these last few games, right, against the Pistons, against the Spurs, the high assist performance games, the keeping the turnovers low, taking care of the basketball, the drive and kick game, right? Him getting downhill, the free throw shooting. There is so much to be encouraged by with Amen Thompson and his growth this year, all while tackling a much bigger on-ball role than he was expecting, that anybody was expecting him having this season. He was supposed to be the secondary creator for this Rockets team. He was supposed to be the secondary primary ball handler for this team, or the secondary ball handler after Fred VanVleet, and instead gets thrust into the spotlight, has to be the primary point guard for this squad. And there have been some bumps and bruises along the way, but I think by and large, it's been a very, very encouraging season for Amen Thompson after a little bit of a shaky start with the finishing around the rim. I have to come out. I'm going to give Amen a flat A for his season so far, being completely honest. I think that there's been a little bit of defensive regression. He hasn't been quite as dominant on that end as he was last year, but it's also because his role has changed drastically on the offensive end to where he's still a great defender. He's still a plus defender. He's just not the same level of top 5 defender in the NBA, DPOY caliber, lock down your best player on a nightly basis type defender, because it's really hard to ask him to be able to do that and to do everything that he does for this team offensively. Madison, how are you feeling about Amen Thompson's progression so far this year?
Man, I think you hit it, man. It's that convergence of this new role versus your all NBA defensive stalwart, man. And, that push and pull, that sweat equity that it takes to do both things, the mental capacity that it takes to run a team and then turn around and be, an all NBA level defender. It takes a toll on you. It takes that the sweat equity does not come cheap. And so that's why we've seen him just be a great defender instead of the all NBA caliber defender that we know, that we've come to love last year. But he has to start taking on a larger role in this offense. He's just too talented not to. And I think his approach in the beginning of the year was to kind of just find his footing. He has Kevin Durant, he has Alperen Sengun, these dynamic offensive players. And I think he took a back seat to them. He was more concerned about getting the ball safely up court and getting guys into sets, getting the ball to who needs to be to actually run those sets, right? And he took a back seat on his ability to make other guys better. But like you said, I think now he's getting downhill. He's making these plays at a much higher level. And I think he's starting to, really etch in his role in this team where he fits in offensively as well, where he can be a dynamic offensive creator as well. And it's really good to see. It's very encouraging to see. Amen Thompson has taken a step in his ball skills overall this year. He put in a lot of work. I can really see it. I mean, there's times where Amen Thompson are putting in combination dribbles, right left crossovers, and really like doing like leaving his defender in a way where he's selling the crossover, and that's a big step from where he was last year. Now there's still a lot more improvement to go. There's still those possessions where Amen Thompson has a head of steam and just loses the ball. He's going too fast, for his handle, to catch up, right? Some of the stuff you see Russell Westbrook do, and you see it happen more often when he's attacking on the break, when he's his most dynamic, right? And at times that can be very frustrating to see because we know this is when he's the most dangerous offensively, right? And so he still has those things he has to clean up. He still has to work on those things, and his ceiling is still, in that all-star, superstar level. But as of right now, I think that delicate balance of, how much on-ball equity do you want him to have? Because the easiest buckets, we talk about this Rockets offense and getting easy buckets. The easiest buckets we get is when Amen Thompson is in the dunker spot. Hands down. They're automatic buckets. They're always open because of the threat of the other guys. And when you take him out and you have it, you know what I mean? It's the juxtapose of those positions, but we still have to continue to develop this guy. And a piece of me still wants to see all NBA defensive Amen Thompson. A piece of me wants to see when a guy, when another superstar is going off on this team, they put together 2-3 buckets in a row, that you can tell Amen Thompson, go stop him in the fourth quarter. When Tyrese Maxey is come alive in the fourth quarter in overtime, I want to see Amen Thompson move to the dunker spot and put all his energy into becoming a stopper. And that is why I'm going to have to give Amen Thompson a solid B on this season. Because to me, the playing field was left for him to take an incredible leap this season. I think he's just improved. You know what I mean? He's gotten better, and that's okay. But he has regressed defensively, and because of that, I think that's one of the big reasons we see these issues we have defensively is, some of this weighs on the players themselves, and we can't sit up here and give Ime Udoka, C pluses and B minuses when the guys on the floor are the guys who have to take it personal. And to me, Amen has been good on defense, but I know what he's capable of, and this is below. Not below, but we know he can be better than this. And for that, and for those reasons, and I'm not asking him to do it all game. I'm asking him to do it in fourth quarters when we need stops. In crucial possessions, go get the best defender. There's only one guy on this team that could guard Tyrese Maxey going to the basket. Amen Thompson. That's the only one. He's the only one with the lateral speed to do that. You know what I mean? And not one time did I really just see him change the game in the ways that I'm used to seeing him change last year.
Coming up, we keep our midseason conversation rolling along. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. Right now, the Seattle Seahawks are minus 4.5 favorites against the Patriots. You've got Sam Darnold as plus 125 to win Super Bowl MVP and plenty more odds to get in on. So if you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Let's go ahead and dive back into the conversation now.
Go ahead.
Let me jump in, though, because I disagree on this particular point with the Sixers game. I thought when that game got away from the Rockets, Amen Thompson was at the scorer's table. I was surprised that not enough people talked about this postgame. The biggest mistake Ime Udoka made in Philadelphia was letting several possessions go in the final 3 minutes when the Rockets blew what had been an 8-point lead with 5 minutes to go, a 7-point lead with 3 minutes to go, with Amen Thompson at the scorer's table, and they had multiple timeouts. If you think he should be in the game, and he should be, he's arguably your best player right now, get him in the game. And I'm giving him a solid A. I'm not giving him an A+ because the start to the year from an efficiency perspective was underwhelming. But what I keep coming back to, the Rockets are more than 10 points better in net rating when Amen plays than when he doesn't. That is by far the best on a team that's fourth in the Western Conference, that's second in point differential, even on a team with multiple all-stars in KD and Sengun. The best net rating differential guy is Amen Thompson. It's not even close. They are by far better when he plays. Defensively, the only rotation player who's above him is Steven Adams, and now he's hurt. I don't know, the eye test would tell me he's not quite as good defensively as he was a year ago, so I see where you're coming from, Madison, but I still think he's very good and trending upwards. And the only knock that you could have on Amen would be the start to the year efficiency-wise was a little underwhelming. But since December 1st, his last 26 games, he's averaging right at 20 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists per game, true shooting at about 61. He's been an all-star for the last 6 weeks. It's just we're not talking about it because so many things until the last 7 games when they are 5-2, until this last 7 games, so many things have been going wrong for the team overall that inherently we're talking more about what's going wrong than what's going right. Since the start of December, really since Thanksgiving, Amen Thompson has been an all-star level player. And I really think in the big picture, there's all these questions with the Rockets. Reed Shepherd, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari, Eason, your young core guys. Who are they going to be long-term? Kevin Durant, how long is he going to be able to sustain this level of play? Just how good of a coach is Ime Udoka? All of these questions are fair, but I think in the macro beyond this season, Amen taking this leap, continuing in his growth trajectory, and he's just 22 years old, year 3. I think it's fair to say the Rockets have 2 all-star level players in Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson that are 23 years old or younger. And that's something that should give you, assuming health, a window that exists for a really long time. Like if you have 2 all-star level players are either going to be, MVP level guys, I don't know. We'll see about that. But I feel like at a bare minimum, those are 2 all-star level guys who are extremely young that are going to be around for a long time. And that always gives you a chance. The window is always open. And I think in the big picture, beyond just this season, some years the bounces are going to go your way. The health gods are going to smile on you. Other years, it's not going to. But I think for this generation of Houston Rockets basketball, the fact that, Sengun's in year 5, he had already taken his all-star leap, so to speak. I think what we've seen this season, he probably won't be an all-star because, the narrative, it takes a little bit of time to catch up with the reality. But Amen Thompson, in my opinion, is having an all-star caliber season. And so it's fair to say you have 2 all-star level young guys on your team for the foreseeable future. And that's a great place to be. It's a great starting point. There are a lot of questions about this team, but I think the fact that now you feel this secure about Amen Thompson into the future, if you twist my arm, I might go A- because I agree with Madison. There is, more that he can do. But I just think in the big picture, the reason I'm giving him an A, it's the peace of mind that for now and moving forward, this guy's going to be a high-level NBA player for a long, long time. And so I'm giving him an A.
Yeah, I'm going to go A- without the twisting of the arm, but I do agree with all of the points. It's funny how we for the most part agree on the points, and then it just lands us at different grades. But for me, the only reason why it's a minus, what's doing a lot of work there is the beginning of the season. I was so disappointed with the finishing around the rim. We were talking about the efficiency or lack thereof. A lot of that, though, was just smoking layups and just not finishing it in the paint the way you would expect somebody as good as he is in that area, as athletic as he is, and the fact that he can get to those spots at will. And these are kind of point blank shots and feel like they should be easy shots for him specifically. That part of it was disappointing. So that's what's bringing it down to the minus, but it's an A because of everything since then and what Ben was talking about, man. He has been just Kevin Durant aside, like I kind of just put KD in his own category. He's been their best player. Like just take KD to the side for a second. To me, he's been their best player over the last 6 weeks or so. The defense, it's interesting because, I like that the Rockets have this luxury of not having to, like, it's the opposite of what the offense is, where they have to just overly rely on KD or overly rely on Sengun. They got so many guys they can throw at a different guy, on the perimeter, that it's really quite a luxury. But to Madison's point,
that's deserving of a sound drop.
Coaches are dogs. All the players are dogs. I'm a dog. That's just what it is.
There we go.
Indeed he is, man. Look, you expect it to be a Ben Thompson. Like you absolutely do. And so I wouldn't say that I'm disappointed in his defense, but I am like left wanting a little bit more. And that actually could be more of a coaching thing, kind of to Ben's point about him not being in the game in that key moment. Yeah. So like I'm not exactly sure what to do with that, if it's more of a how it's being deployed, or if he's actually regressed, which I just to be clear here, I don't think he's regressed defensively. It just is the performance itself is leaving more to be desired.
And by the way, I went and looked it up. He checked out at the 5-minute mark when I believe the Rockets were up 8, and he checked back in with 47 seconds left when it was a 2-point game, right before the killer KD turnover that led to the tying Maxey layup that sent it to overtime.
Yeah. OT?
Huh? He was in there in OT, yeah. But I'm just saying the fourth quarter, I mean, that was the window for the Rockets. To me, that was a classic game
that's the stretch where Maxey had like 11 points to close the game out. And well, sorry, it was 9 points. It should have been 11 if they had actually caught the goaltend the way that it was supposed to. They had no answer for Maxey down the stretch, and it's because Amen wasn't in the game. Great catch, Ben.
Until the final 47 seconds. Yeah, and then overtime, I just chalked that up to fatigue. That's the classic game where you spend so much energy in the comeback, you need to finish it off. If it goes to overtime, I knew the Rockets tanks were on empty. It is what it is.
Yeah, and so on the defensive end, like I offer him a little bit of grace for this increased offensive role, this increased on-ball role, I should say, that we're all talking about. And so I do wonder but I do feel like there is some give and take with that. But man, again, talk about this Rockets defense. Ben, you pointed this out earlier, how they are, top 10, they're 10th for the month of January and 7th for the season. I do want to point out, I know we're talking about Amen Thompson, but it just led me to a team point overall, that since December 5th, they're like right there in the middle of the road. I want to say it's 16th. I just had it up here. Yeah, 16th since December 5th. So right there in the middle of the road, that kind of is that balance between when they're really good and and then not so much. But as it relates to Amen Thompson, like I feel like the growth that we've seen from him on ball from the beginning of the year to now is worth commending. And look, like, to me, I'm right there with Ben. This is one of your future all-stars, if not this year, and it probably not going to be this year, but certainly next year. And you're seeing that trend. You're seeing that trend a lot more as of late. He's a lot better on ball than he was earlier in the year. But I still contend my favorite Rockets offense or set, if you will, and I don't even know if it's a set, but I'll say this: my favorite thing to see the Rockets do is some kind of KD Alperen Sengun pick and roll with Amen Thompson in the dunker spot. I would spam it. I would run it 95% of the time.
And you can see how, the version of the offense that would have existed with a healthy Fred would have been Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun in the pick and roll with KD and Jabari on the wings and Amen in the dunker spot. You see what the vision was supposed to be for this team. And then you have to move a couple guys around. And then because of health and the limitations on the roster, that fifth guy, right? Some possessions, it's Reed Shepherd. In those possessions, the offense and the spacing looks a little bit better, looks a little bit more how it's supposed to be. And in some possessions where it's, a Kogi or, somebody else, then the offensive spacing gets messy. Or if it's Adams out there, then you got two guys trying to float the baseline in the dunker spot. So there have been some limitations due to personnel issues that I am sympathetic towards the coaching staff for having to, try and work around so far this season. One of my things for Amen, and I'm curious just to see moving forward, his growth. He's gotten better on ball. He's gotten more secure with the basketball, better at getting them in and out of the sets, better at creating. I wonder when or if Amen Thompson will ever get to a point where it feels some players have a sense of safe when they have the ball. Some players, they have the basketball and you're like, they're not going to turn it over. You're going to get a good quality possession. They're going to read the defense the right way. They're not going to be sped up or pressured, right? Fred is one of those guys. Fred is a very safe with the ball basketball player. Chris Paul was one of those guys, right? A lot of them, you go down the list. There's a lot of floor generals that possessed this innate trait. You know a guy that doesn't have that trait? Russell Westbrook. You know a guy that at times didn't have that trait? James Harden. Right, these are guys that at times had been very turnover prone. I will maintain that even during the Harden Chris Paul years, I didn't feel as safe with the ball in Harden's hands as I did with the ball in Chris Paul's hands.
It was a bit of an adventure. That's fair. It was a bit of an adventure sometimes.
It can be a little roller coastery at times. My point is just, will Amen ever develop that gift, right? Will he ever get to the point where he is safe and secure with the ball, where beyond the shadow of a doubt that you will be able to generate a high quality possession, that he will be able to get the ball up the floor, beating pressure from a defense, right? Get you in and out of your sets, because the Rockets have shown time and time again down the stretch of games. We talked about some of the weaknesses that this team exhibits over and over and over against some of these, in these crunch time situations. Their inability to take care of the basketball, their inability to have one guy that they can give the ball to and guarantee that they will get a high quality possession out of it, because Kevin Durant has been pressured and turnover prone. Alperen Sengun at times is a bit turnover prone. Amen Thompson can be pressured and cough up the basketball as well. So that's going to be, to me, in his development, progress moving forward in his career, that's the next thing. If he can develop that skill, that would give me the confidence in him being the future full-time point guard for this team for the next 5 to 10 years, whatever, developing that skill. Because there are guys, again, Russ doesn't have that skill. Russ is a force of nature, a chaotic force, for better or for worse, out there on the floor. And generally the chaos wins out in his favor. At least it did earlier in his career. But I don't want Amen to be that type of point guard, right? I hopefully want to see him develop into a point guard that can be safe with the basketball, that can play high IQ level basketball and get you in and out of sets properly, as a point guard should be able to do on a nightly basis. Coming up, we keep our midseason conversation rolling along. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You can pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and have tickets within minutes. It truly is that simple. The all-in price upfront is my favorite feature on Game Time. No surprise fees at checkout. They are fully transparent from start to finish. They also have zone deals for you to take advantage of, so be on the lookout for those. Great last-minute ticketing options. So take the guesswork out of buying your NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's go ahead and dive into the final part of our conversation for this portion of our Rockets midseason review. There's one more guy that we got to spend a little bit of time talking about before we wrap things up here. Save the best for last. There's some looks going around the screen here.
Yeah.
Jabari Smith Jr. It has been an experience, to say the least, for Jabari Smith Jr. this season. By
the way, Jackson, we jinxed him not even a month ago. We did
I know.
At the end of December,
we put him on the LOR curse. I know. I know.
It's on us. Blame Jackson and Ben.
Yeah, there you go. Good old hashtag blame Ben. We're gonna have to. Yeah, we have to fix the hashtag. It's got to be blame Ben and Jackson. There you go. Look, it's been disappointing, to say the least, to see what we've seen out of Jabari this season. A year where it really feels like because we're still in the middle of it, right? He should be having a career year numbers wise, and he was for a little while there, right? As to Ben's point, right, when we are highlighting his kind of career best numbers, and then he goes through that really insane shooting stretch one of the worst shooting stretches of his entire career. And maybe you just chalk it up to a really bad stretch, and hopefully we'll be able to, when we reflect back on this 82-game season, we look at that stretch from Jabari and we say, all right, he had that one really bad stretch, but he was really good outside of that one stretch, right? Hopefully that's the story of his season. But he just needs to be so much better and so much more consistent in his role for this Rockets team, because he gets some of the easiest shots on the team. He has one of the easiest roles on the team because there isn't a level of defensive expectation that's being placed on Jabari's shoulders similar to, say, an Amen Thompson, right? Nobody's asking Jabari to be the team's ace defensive stopper. And offensively, he's not tasked with even as much responsibility as Reed Shepherd has offensively on most nights, right? He is a role player offensively. His job is to stand there, knock down shots, and be a release valve for this team. Madison and I use that term all the time, right? Be the ultimate release valve for this Rockets team. And unfortunately, he has not delivered in that regard so far this season, at least not effectively and consistently. Even in the earlier part of the year where the numbers were career best, right? He was still kind of inconsistent on a game-to-game basis. There'd be some games where he has the 15 plus and the Rockets look really, really good. And then there'd be the other games where he really struggles to put the ball in the hoop and the Rockets lose those games. He is quite literally the X factor, the swing factor for this Rockets offense, because you can count on KD's production. You can count on Sengun's production. Hell, some games you can even count on a Reed Shepherd flurry to happen if Ime Udoka gives him enough rope, right? Jabari has been the guy that when he's missing, the team loses. When he plays to the level that he's supposed to be able to consistently play at, they win games. I think because of that, I'm gonna go C-. It's been really rough. It's been really rough this year. I don't know. That might be really aggressive, but I'm going C- because that stretch and again, the 1 for 10 shooting game, like just so many rough games, and it's hard to like look at those games and say, because they lost some of those games for a lot of reasons other than Jabari Smith Jr., but you could mask a lot of the other issues that this team has faced if Jabari just plays even somewhat replacement level basketball for some of those losses where he was just awful. So I'm going C- for Jabari. B. Scott, what you got?
Yeah, man. I mean, it feels fair. It feels fair. And I'm a Jabari fan, Jabari stan.
Hey,
Jabari.
I'm one of the original Jabari. I'm one of the original Jabari Jungle guys. I was happy they got him. All right, and so I'm even more disappointed because I still want to believe that there's something more there. Like they haven't quite scratched the surface of what he could maybe be as a player. And with each passing day, I start thinking to myself, I'm like, he's just going to be a role player, and hopefully an upper level role player, but he's just going to be a role player, and that's it.
I'm right there with you, man. I have these things like whenever the Rockets bring in a young player, I try to envision, okay, what could this guy be? And I try to be really optimistic. Okay, on the optimistic side, is Jabari Smith like, a new age LaMarcus Aldridge? I did that in my mind, this is years ago. And the answer is no. Okay, the answer is a definitive no on that. But that's where I started, and now this is where I am. I mean, it's just plain. We don't have to really spend a lot of time, or I don't have to spend a lot of time on this. It's the open shots that he's missing, the lack of shot making, whether we're talking about from three, whether we're talking about from mid range. And I know there are a lot of people that don't like the Jabari mid range shots at all. I eventually have arrived at that place because he doesn't make enough of them. I've always been the guy that's like, man, if you can knock down a mid-range shot, if you can be a consistent mid-range shooter, I'm not going to be the new age math guy that's like, no, you got to go shoot the three. No, if you can knock down a mid-range, if that's your shot, you practice that shot and you're good at it, I want you to shoot. And they're giving it to you. It's an open shot. To me, it's still a good shot. Math be damned. But he ain't hitting it. So now it's a bad shot. Now it's a bad shot. Mid-range shot that you can't hit is now an awful shot. And so those are the things that keep me up at night when I'm thinking about Jabari Smith. It's like, man, could he just knock down some of these middies? Like, even some of them are like 1-2 dribble pull-ups, and there are people who hate those shots. I love them when he makes them, want him to make them. He doesn't make enough of them. And then the open threes, like, you just got to be better. Especially for a team that struggles offensively, for a team that doesn't have the most fluid offensive approach or identity. Whenever you are able to create, Jackson, you mentioned this earlier about how everything just seems to be so difficult, for this offense. Well, really, except some of the Jabari shots, most of, if not all of the Jabari shots are not difficult at all. And so the fact that he doesn't make them enough and isn't making them at a large enough clip, and sometimes the nights are just horrible, like, a 1 for 10 night or whatever it is. Those are just rough to watch. I'm gonna be right there with you, Jackson. I got to go C-, and it hates me as a fellow member of the Jabari jungle like yourself to relegate him to that grade, but got to be real with it. That's what I'm seeing.
Madison.
Yeah. So if we give Jabari the beginning of the season, A, but give him the second half of the season, F, I think we land at the C range, right? Yeah. So I think those are fair. And I think that's where I'll land, around a C plus for Jabari. And, what really bothers me is not just the offense. You guys laid it out. Those are the type. You are the ultimate release valve. The Rockets, how well a defense plays against our superstars is a large part up to Jabari Smith and his ability to knock down shots after they have drawn attention, right? And he was billed to be a knockdown shooter at the very least. I don't need you to be a superstar, Jabari. Seems like that ship is kind of sailed, and which is not it's okay though.
You sounded so dejected when you said it. That ship is kind of sailed.
But it's okay. You can be a star in your role because you have a special skill set as a big with an elite shooting touch, right?
We thought, right? And we're still left to be desired. And now you're going, in third, fourth year? We expect you to reach veteran status and those dividends to pay out offensively. But more importantly, we all know shot, you go through rough stretches. That happens. Defensively, Jabari Smith. Defensively.
Yes.
Who are you? Are you just another guy who's filling space in the lane? Or are you going to be a physical anchor for this Rockets defense? A switch-all guy that we can count on in any instance? Are you going to be physical? Are you going to ignite your teammates? Who are you defensively? Because that is my biggest issue with Jabari Smith. Every night, you should be one of our best defenders. You should be physical. You should be annoying. Look at what Jabari Smith did in the Detroit game. I'll go back to it.
Yes.
Annoying everybody, igniting his teammates defensively, making plays, giving energy. Jabari Smith, you are in a unique spot to be the Dylan Brooks, to be the Draymond Green, the emotional leader defensively. You always got your face screwed up like you're mad, you're angry at something. You want to, I can hear you cussing. Every night, man, be a professional. Be what the Rockets need from you. We need an emotional leader defensively. Your shot will come and go, right? You're capable of this. And right now you're doing something that's below your capabilities. And for that, you get a C. And for that, you get a C. And you weren't doing this even in the beginning of the year because you was carried by your offense. You were carried by your offense. Now your offense is failing, and now you're finding it hard to make an impact on this team. This is the way, Jabari. And so that's why I'll give him a C.
Madison, I'm so glad you made the defensive argument because that's exactly what the data shows. I'm a C as well, and it's primarily because of the defense. Offensively, even with January being as rough as it is from a shooting perspective, in terms of on-off differential, Jabari is still number one on this team in terms of swing factors when he plays versus when he doesn't, and the team's offensive productivity. And I think it speaks to, the first 2.5 months or so, he shot really well. But even when he doesn't shoot well, he's still very well respected as a shooter. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to make an impact. He spaces the floor. He's tall enough to shoot from anywhere. He can get offensive rebounds and putbacks. He's a guy who allows your guys like Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun space to operate. And in contrast to Amen Thompson, who has more high-level skills, but some clear deficiencies as well with the jump shot, Jabari has a fairly high floor across the board offensively. And even in January, when he shot terribly, Jabari is still third best on the Rockets in on-off differential on offense, trailing only KD and Sengun. So he needs to be better offensively. That's not me saying, oh, he's been a positive player this month. He hasn't been. I just bring all that up to say that in a team construct, he benefits you offensively. And when the shooting stabilizes, he's going to be a net positive player, especially when you have the big guns around him and the scoring and playmaking potential that this team has with Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun. Defensively, though, for the month of January, when his shooting numbers have dipped, he is dead last in on-off differential on defense. The Rockets' defensive rating when Jabari plays is 114, mediocre, middle of the pack. When he sits, it's about 95.5. It's a more than 18-point swing. That's 10 points better. Some perspective. When Jabari sits in January, their defense is more than 10 points better than Oklahoma City, who easily ranks number 1 in the NBA. They are historically elite with Jabari sitting in January and mediocre when he plays on defense. Now, is there some small sample size theater to that? Probably. But I think the larger point remains, which is that defensively, that's where there's been particularly a fall off. And it's not quite that much for the season overall. And so what that tells me, and Ime Udoka has called this out with some of his post-game comments, especially when Jabari went through his slump. He talked about the body language. You could see it in his eyes. Jabari lets his shooting struggles impact all the other elements of his game. And perhaps you should expect it with him being 22 years old. He's still very young, but the Detroit model, like that needs to be the template, the blueprint moving forward. He had 10 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Control what you can control. And that's what's been so frustrating. It would be much easier to treat the shooting slump as a one-off and say, well, as the sample increases, he's going to make more shots. He's going to be fine. Well, the problem is that he's let the slump affect all the other elements of his game to the point where a guy who should be one of your defensive difference makers has actually been perhaps your biggest defensive liability this month, or at least up there. So I think a lot of this comes down to, and I suspect Jabari knows it when he watches himself on film, but to take this full circle, I'm also a little bit disappointed in Ime Udoka because on paper, Ime should be the perfect coach for a guy with this deficiency to get him to buy in on just play hard, control what you can control. The shots will eventually fall. And that hasn't been what's happened. Now, maybe it does with time. He's still young. We're only halfway through the season. But that is why I'm a little bit disappointed defensively with this team. They should be better. And Ime should be the perfect coach to improve Jabari in these areas. And maybe with time he does. It just hasn't happened yet. And that's why I'm so disappointed with Jabari's season. Even with the downturn in shooting this month, he's still on the balance been a very productive player offensively. But defensively, relative to last year, relative to the start of this year, there's been a clear downward trend. He has the tools to be better, and he's not. And most of it is between the ears because he's letting the shooting slump affect all the other elements of his game. And so I can't grade him lower than a C because, look, this is a top 4 offense in the NBA, and he's clearly helping them offensively when he's on the floor. The data shows it, so I can't act like it's a D or an F. But defensively, the slippage is enough, especially with the tools we know Jabari has. I can't grade him any higher than a C either. So I'll go C.
And to circle it back to the point, one of the points that I was making earlier, that's why it's so frustrating when it gets juxtaposed to like Reed Shepherd not being allowed to be out there because he is a perceived defensive liability, but he has this insane offensive ceiling. And then you have a guy like Jabari Smith Jr. who is and was for a few weeks there an actual offensive liability, wasn't doing anything offensively, and was also not really adding much defensively because he was letting his lack of offense or his offensive frustrations drag back his ability to be a difference maker on on the defensive side, like I keep going back to, there was the Clippers game, right, where the Clippers were like actively hunting Jabari on switches. They were inviting the Jabari Smith Jr. matchup because they were like, that's a favorable matchup for us. That should never happen. Jabari Smith Jr. should never be a favorable defensive matchup for anybody in the NBA. He is supposed to be your 1 through 5 switch everything Swiss Army knife defender who can guard out on the perimeter, smaller guys, get down low and bang with bigger guys in the paint. He's supposed to be able to do it all defensively. And so I think that's where you get into this, idea of, okay, well, why is Jabari Smith Jr. got this massively long leash where he's able to still be out there, and yet Reed Shepherd gets yanked after a couple of mistakes, or he's not out there closing games when clearly he gives them at times a higher ceiling, both offensively and when he's engaged and playing well, right? To Madison's point about the Spurs game, right, where he was arguably the best defender for the Rockets in that fourth quarter down the stretch against the Spurs, right there. He can clearly make an impact at times. So I do think that Jabari is a swing factor for this team. We've addressed it. And for this team to be able to be the best version of itself, right, they need him to be consistent on both sides of the floor. And I appreciate both of you guys for bringing up the defensive side for Jabari, because I really do think that also to Madison's point, right, there's that emotional defensive leader role that is there for the taking. And it's somebody has to take that role. I said this the other day on the pod, but whether it's Amen Thompson or Jabari or Tari Eason, once he gets healthy and gets right and is able to be a consistent part of the rotation again, one of those guys needs to claim that role, that enforcer role defensively, that I'm going to light the fire under my team defensively, that Dillon Brooks role. The Rockets need somebody in that role, and they've got 3 ideal candidates for it. They just need one of them to step up and claim it.
The way I would sum it up to this point of the 25-26 season, Jabari's been a front runner. When things go well for him, he looks really good. He's a star in his role, like Madison talked about. But when things aren't going well for him, it spirals. You can see it all. It's written on his face. You can see it in his effort. And you can't be that emotional defensive leader if your effort isn't consistent, if your play is that volatile. So the challenge is on Jabari and also Ime Udoka to get him to focus on controlling what he can control, because until he does that, he's not going to be capable of being that emotional leader defensively. 90% of defense is about effort. It's about focus. And you're going to have nights over 82 games and over long playoff series where things aren't going well for you. And you can't fade into the background and be that type of emotional leader. You just can't. Emotional leaders are there when their team needs them. They step up when the team is facing adversity. And too often this year, that's what Jabari isn't doing. Now, he's still young enough. He's got time to fix it. On paper, Ime is the ideal coach for it. But at some point, it's got to actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, that's going to wrap up our Rockets mid-season review. This is going to be a multi-part thing. I don't know if it's going to be 2 parts or 3 parts because we've been talking for a while here.
Get us together, it happens.
You know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at. We'll go Madison, then Brandon, then Ben.
Find me on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Come talk Rockets basketball and NBA draft.
And you can find me on YouTube and wherever it is you get your podcast, the B Block Podcast, and also Sports Radio 610 every week.
Ben DuBose on Twitter and Blue Sky, and RocketsWire.usatoday.com for all your daily Houston Rockets news coverage.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way to help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.